Sarah McCarthy here. I'm going to show you how to make one of my slab built bowls using a slab and a slump mold. The first thing we'll do is gather some slump molds. I use wooden molds from Floyd. The Boyds make them. You can also use a bisque mold or a plaster mold. If you make your own bisque molds, just make sure that you create one where the edge here is flat, so you have a place to attach your pieces together. Alrighty, we'll get started. The first thing we'll do is we'll get our slump mold and we're gonna roll out a piece of clay for that slump mold. I, of course, roll mine out, as you can see. That is my preferred method to get a slab. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to measure how big our slump mold is. So we're going to get a little measuring tape and just measure the rim here. And this looks like it's about 23. I actually write on the bottom of my molds. Well, that says 22, but I do 23. How many inches that is. Now we're going to add our slab into our slump mold. Just placing it in there first with the fingers. Then I'm going to use this rib to rib it out. One of my favorite parts. I love ribbing. I'm going to make sure to rib that edge, that rim, so we have a nice flat surface to add our sidewall. Next, I'm going to cut the excess clay off the slump mold. Tamp down those edges a little bit with the finger. We're going to form this clay into a long round tube form with our fingers. Then I'm going to roll it out long as we're going to make a sidewall for this pot to add it on there. Now I'm going to roll it out with my rolling pin. We're looking for about 22 to 23 inches. Picking that up so it'll get a little longer. After rolling this out, I'm going to measure it again to see if I have about 22 to 23 inches. And I'm going to cut off a little bit of the end. And I'm also going to cut a little bit so it's a little bit more even. Damp it down a little bit. Cut off the end. Now we slip and score the edge of our rolled out slab. Now that we have slipped and scored the slump mold and the sidewall, we're going to add them together. I'm going to add these pieces. Now when we've got it on our on our slump mold where we want it. We're gonna cut these two slabs where they meet. We're gonna cut them on a bevel. And I'm using my Dolan tool 220C that I really love. I'm just gonna cut these two pieces of clay. And we'll slip and score them now. And add those two pieces together. And we're looking for a seamless look here. Some hand building is done where you can see the seams, which is sometimes really beautiful. This is going to be seamless, hopefully. So it takes a little while to add these together. Push those together. Next, we're going to compress the sidewall to the slump mold and just compress our clay so we know that the two areas are gonna come together. So I'm just really pressing down on that sidewall gently to where we slip and scored. I go around a couple times, 2 or 3 times. Just gently pressing down on that sidewall. Now that we have smoothed out the seam as best as we can, we're gonna put some coils where that seam is, where I've added the sidewall to the slump mold. So I'm gonna use some coils here, and I'm gonna slip and score the coils. I'm going to add them on. Just going to add that coil to that seam, press it down with my finger, and go all around the edge, all around that seam with coils. So the coils I go around with my finger and smooth them out, and I also use the rib to rib where that seam is. So you don't see where I added the coils, and there's a nice smooth surface in the edge there. Next, we're going to create a bulbous form with the rib by ribbing the inside of the sidewall. Just bringing the sidewall out a little bit. So the sidewall isn't just straight up and down. There's going to be a little bit of a form, a little bit of a nice shape to this bowl. And while I do this, I work on those coils a little bit, that clay in there, and work that clay up to the sidewall. After I've ribbed the inside to create this shape, the area that I have added the two pieces and cut them and added them back together, sometimes you can see that seam. So we're gonna add another coil to that seam, slipping and scoring, and just adding a little bit of clay there seems to really help to disguise the seam. I'm going to use my rib to rib that out. After I've completed the initial form, I leave it in the slump mold, usually overnight, for many hours, and I've set that aside. This is a pot that I've let sit overnight. I'm going to take it out of the slump mold. The next stage is to get rid of that seam that we see, that extra clay, where the slump mold meets the sidewall. So I'm going to take my Dolan tool, and I'm just going to gently, firmly cut this seam off. This part definitely takes a little while. Just slicing that clay off. We're going for a form that is kind of even and where you can't really see where the bottom meets the top. Just slice that clay off. We are removing the clay from this area we've added. And after we've removed most of it, we're going to take our rib again and smooth down that area. It's going to make it look really, really nice and smooth. So after ribbing this for quite a while, this is the final form we're going for. Slab built bowl with a slump mold. Round is an option, but another option could be rectangular, square as well, oval. This is an example of one that I do that's square. Here's a little bit bigger round form, completed, leather hard. And have fun experimenting, and thanks for stopping by.